ascolta, you can be creative. There is not only just one correct answer.
Okay, perhaps if I say one and you can think of others, just in case our listeners have thought of others, then you can give us some further examples.
Ok, allora, Alice è concentrata
Alice
e
è
ascolta il
concentrata.
professore.
Ascolta prof.
Could I say attentamente?
Sì,
Attentamente.
sì,
So Alice is concentrated. She concentrates hard,
sì,
and she listens to the teacher carefully,
sì.
attentamente. Anything else?
Pazientemente.
Oh, patiently. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay,
Pazientemente.
let's go into another one.
Allora, i miei genitori sono molto precisi e fanno tutto.
Precisamente.
Perhaps they would do everything. If they're very precise, they would do everything perfectly, perfettamente.
Sì,
Perfettamente.
perfettamente.
Ok, i miei genitori sono
Perfettamente.
molto precisi, molto, because it's
sono
the
molto
adverb form, they're
precisi.
molto precisi, e fanno tutto perfettamente, they do
Fanno
everything
tutto
perfectly.
perfettamente.
Okay, any other ideas for that one?
Fanno tutto rigorosamente.
Oh, rigorosamente.
Okay, let's go on to number 3.
Numero 3. Sono sempre in ritardo, quindi faccio colazione.
Velocemente.
Velocemente.
Could you say rapidamente?
Rapidamente.
Sì, sì.
Is veloce a bit more normal than
Probably more common than the rapido. Or
Okay.
rapido probably gives the idea of something even faster.
Okay, let's stick with velocemente there. So I'm always late and therefore I have breakfast very quickly. Faccio colazione velocemente.
Faccio
Ok.
colazione
Per
velocemente.
vincere la maratona, gli atleti devono allenarsi.
I'm not familiar with allenarsi.
Allenarsi.
Allenarsi significa to train.
Ok, to train.
Allenarsi.
So per vincere la maratona
Duramente.
gli atleti devono allenarsi costantemente.
Costantemente.
Costantemente. Okay, so constantly we drop out the N there.
Sì.
Costantemente. Okay, could we also say sempre?
Oh yes,
Sempre.
of course. It's also
Okay.
an adverb.
Okay, and perhaps if they're not wanting to vincere la maratona, forse possiamo dire mai.
Mai.
Sì, and remember you want to add the non.
Non. Ok, so per vincere la maratona
Per
gli
vincere
atleti che non
gli
vogliono
atleti
vincere
che non
non
vogliono
devono allenarsi mai.
Sì, sì.
A bit silly that
mai.
one, but we're just using another.
Ok, ancora una. La maestra ha molta pazienza e ripete ogni cosa.
Could we use
Spessamente.
pazientemente again?
Sì,
Oh,
sì,
pazien-
sì.
She repeats
sì.
everything patiently.
Sì.
Pazientemente.
Or gentilmente.
Yeah.
Certo.
Okay.
Bravo Mark.
Okay, now we've got one more.
So this week I'm gonna show my Asimil notebook again because it's been a while since I've gone through it, and kind of just talk about how I've been using it recently, which isn't much different than before. But for instance, with this one, 39esima lezione, so the 39th lesson, here you can see I highlighted in yellow coniugi in yellow because, and as you could tell there when I tried saying the word, there's a word where for some reason it was a little tricky for me to pronounce. So just highlighted it so that way I know I can go back to practice saying it coniugi until it comes more comfortably. Then here I highlighted in green suocera, which is belle-mère, which is mother-in-law, in green because that's just a piece of vocabulary or word or phrase that I don't know. And then when I go through and I do my revision, so in the Asimil book, every 7th lesson is a revision. And so I go back through all of the 7 lessons and I go through all of the dialogue that they use in the lesson, and I read it aloud for extra practice. And of course, that's what I'm going through and rechecking all the highlighted words and pronunciation words, and also grammar structures that may have found interesting, not necessarily even having difficulties with them, just something that I thought was interesting to note. And so here you can see some more highlighted words like spostiamo, but that's not that interesting. That was just, that's a piece of vocabulary that I couldn't remember what it meant when I went back through to revise the lesson. And then, but down here, dai means ale, and means like, let's go. And I couldn't remember that. And so that's a useful phrase that, and this is really one of the things that I like the most about Asimil is these kind of little like words and phrases that you see, and they do a pretty good job of repeating them throughout the lesson. So you get continued exposure to those words and phrases, and they're kind of useful little extra things that just help bring your language kind of to that, next level, I would say, in terms of at least the way that you can express yourself in a more natural way. Here we can see, and I've done this specifically for the video so that way it would be easy for me to point out, but here you can see in this red box, un sacco di. Well, that's something that I think I've even talked about in previous videos, but that's something I learned through Asimil, and then they've repeated it here again in this lesson, even though it's, 30 lessons later, however many. And it's just good because it's further exposure, reinforces the things that they showed you before. So that's another thing that I appreciate. And what else? Yeah, you can see more like coniugi and un sacco di. They show up again. Over here, word that I was couldn't remember, insulsi, which means nul in French. And so, okay, just getting repeated exposure. So that way now I do remember what it means. Here's an example where I highlighted in pink a grammar structure. Me l'ha montré in French, which is me lo ha mostrato in Italian. And it's the same structure in French and Italian, but it's something that it's useful. This kind of construction you would see often. And so I just highlighted it because to me it was an interesting grammar structure that I want to either, practice more or just take note of because it's something that I would use probably pretty often. And I think that's about all I really wanted to cover with the Asimil portion of my studying this week. So that's it. So for this week, with my short stories, I thought I might read a little bit from it and to show you how my reading's coming along, and also that'll show my pronunciation and how that has improved, if it has improved. And just a reminder, the way that I use this is the first pass through, I read along with the audio. I have the ebook the audiobook on Audible. And so I listen to the audio as I read through on the first pass. On the second pass, I go through and just read, no audio, and I highlight unknown words, as you can see here. And then on the third pass, I go back through all of the highlight sentences where I have words highlighted, and I reread the sentence, and I try to see if I remember what the highlighted word means. And if not, then I go back to the dictionary that they have and check the meaning against the definition. And then if a word's in bold here, that means it's in the back of the chapter. But if it's not a word in bold, like abbattuto, that means that I keep track of the word myself and make my own dictionary essentially. And I go look up the definition and write it in physically. So, for example, we'll start here. This chapter, for some reason, there's not a lot of words. Like you can see on the front page, I didn't highlight any words. So it's a good thing, I think, in the sense that my Italian's coming along, so there's fewer words, but we'll see if that continues through to the end. It might just be a one-off with this chapter that I happen to know a lot of the vocabulary. So, Il giorno dopo Eric si presenta in stazione con lo zaino in spalla. Zaino is highlighted in yellow because it's a word that I previously saw, and I remember that it was a word that I previously highlighted because it meant backpack, and I didn't know that at that time. In spalla, originally I thought spalla might be like espalda, back, but it actually means shoulders, which makes sense as well for zaino, backpack. Then, poco prima delle 7 vede un grande gruppo di persone vicino al bar. Davanti a loro c'è una persona che porta in mano un lungo bastone sul quale sventola un fazzoletto colorato. Ecco Emilia. So, taking the start of this sentence, davanti a loro c'è una persona. So in front of them is a person che porta in mano un lungo bastone. So, who holds in their hand a long stick, sul quale sventola un fazzoletto colorato, on which there is a colored tissue. I'm guessing sventola is like flap, if I remember correctly. Yeah, flap. And then they say fazzoletto is tissue, so I'm guessing it means in this context like marking, marking of some kind. Eric raggiunge il gruppo e dopo la presentazione salgono tutti sul treno che in un paio d'ore li porterò alla stazione di Gorizia. So Eric rejoins the group, and after the presentation, like people presenting themselves, salgono, they all get in the train, che in un paio d'ore li porterà alla stazione di Gorizia. So that takes them to the station, the Gorizia station. So, yep, that was an example of my reading and how my reading and pronunciation has come along. Ciao, benvenuto a tutti nel mio vlog della settimana 7. Questa settimana ho finito Il Piccolo Principe, che sì, conosco che è un libro per i bambini, però ovviamente per il mio livello è un buon libro per me, per praticare il mio vocabolario e continuare a fare di progresso con l'italiano. Quindi sono felice che ho finito questo libro questa settimana. E sì, ora non so esattamente qualche libro vado a cominciare prossimo, però continuo anche con il mio libro delle storie corte, e questa vado bene anche, e quindi sì, spero che la prossima settimana vado a finire il primero libro delle storie corte, e la prossima settimana va a essere la ultima settimana in il secondo fase di il mio esperimento. Quindi sì, se finire questo libro, posso cominciare con il secondo libro delle storie corte. E anche ho fatto 21 lezioni di Coffee Break Italian per ogni per 9.8 ore con link. Ora utilizzo link per i miei libri, per esempio come Il Piccolo Principe. Quindi ora quando dico le ore di link, non è le storie corte o le mini storie come prima. Quindi questa settimana ho fatto 2,5 ore di link, che tutte le ore sono su Il Piccolo Principe. Con Asimil questa settimana non fatto molto, solamente 4 lezioni e una lezione di revisione. Quindi necessito o voglio migliorare questo aspetto dei miei studi la prossima settimana. Con Italian Uncovered ho fatto niente questa settimana, solamente 0 ore, e perché ora ho 6 utile che utilizzo per i miei studi. Con le mie storie corte, il libro delle storie corte, ho fatto 6 su 7 giorni con questo libro, quindi 6 storie. Quindi voi avete a vedere in questo video il mio la 13 storia corta che ho fatto oggi. Quindi sì, spero, perché questo libro, penso che questo libro ha 20 capitoli in questo libro, quindi solamente necessito leggo 7 capitoli più e questo libro è fine. Quindi spero al fine della prossima settimana vado a essere il fine della seconda fase. E questa settimana ho fatto 7 lezioni su Italki con i miei maestri, perché questa settimana ho deciduto a prendere 2 maestre, perché penso che è buono per me che ho qualche maestra e persone differenti, perché un accento un po' differente e ovviamente persone diverso persone diverse hanno interesse diverso anche probabilmente è buono per il mio vocabolario passivo e attivo perché vado a imparare nuove cose diverse. Con i miei compiti passivo ho fatto 6 giorni questa settimana e ho 6 episodi di guida astrologica per cuori infranti. Infranti è una cosa che ho scritto perché non posso ricordare il nome della serie in italiano, perché ogni volta che apro Netflix la serie è in inglese, quindi necessito scrivere il nome. E sì, ora ho trovato una nuova serie perché ora ho finito le 2 stagioni di guida astrologica per i cuori infranti. Quindi necessito una nuova serie. Ho trovato una, però non mi ho ricordato come si chiama. Penso che è una cosa come like 56 perché è like 56 bytes, è una serie tecnologica da una persona che lavora in un'azienda di tecnologica. Quindi, okay, so that was my Italian for this week. Obviously, I'm starting to feel more comfortable. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, probably. I think some I know for sure I made, but I probably made a bunch that I wasn't even aware of. But at least I'm obviously more comfortable expressing myself, and deciding to do the week 7 summary gave me a topic to think about, because before I was largely just trying to make up stuff to talk about, and it's certainly much easier when you actually have a subject in mind, because then it just helps facilitate your thoughts instead of just randomly coming up with stuff. And so I did my week 7 summary in Italian. Now I'm going to do it in English. And so Coffee Break Italian, 7 out of 7 days. Haven't missed a day thus far. 21 lessons, 9.8 hours of Coffee Break Italian. Link now is just going to be reading stories. If you couldn't understand from the Italian, I finished The Little Prince. I know it's a kid's book, but obviously my level's that of a kid. So I read the book. It's actually the first time I've ever read that book. I've never even read it in French. And so now when I say link, it's really going to be whatever book I happen to be reading at that time. Same with Spanish. I use link to read, like right now, El Siciliano. And so in Spanish. So Link did it every day as well, 7 out of 7 days, 46 days out of 49 overall, 2.5 hours, finished Little Prince. I'm not sure what I'm going to read next on Link. I need to look to see what's on the platform, and if there's not, I need to find a PDF to upload to it. Next up is Asimil, where I did 4 lessons plus a revision, only 4 out of 7 days for 41 out of 49 days overall. I would like to bump that up, but because now I've essentially got two tools that I'm using for reading, Link and short stories, some of these other tools, and also because of the italki, well, that's 7 hours out of my week now, because I do a lesson every day for an hour. And so that's just less time I have for some of these other tools. And reading is just so practical because I can do it at the gym between sets. You know, I always have phone on you, so if you've got waiting for an appointment at the doctor's, boom, can pop it out, read 15 minutes, whatever it is. Coffee Break Italian's always going to stick because that's something I use in the car. I'm always driving. So it is what it is. 2.6 hours when I'm in just like a cruise mode where cruise, that's like a half or a third of what I would do in a language in a week. So I can't be too disappointed with 2.6 hours for ASML. Italian Uncovered, I did 0 days. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's gonna end up sticking around or not. We'll see. It's probably gonna be sporadic. I mean, it was already sporadic before now, but it's definitely sporadic now for sure. And so next up, so not much obviously to report on that. Next up is short stories. I did 6 out of 7 days this week for 13 out of 14 overall because short stories, I only started that last week, obviously, 14 days. I did 6 chapters for 2.73 hours this week. Happy with that. Hoping to finish that book out next week. That'll be the end of phase 2, so perfect. And then in phase 3, I'll try and finish another short stories book along with reading something on Link as well. For my italki lessons, I did 7 out of 7 days for 7 lessons, so 7 hours. And that's going really well. I'm happy with my progress. It really seems like I'm making strides quite quickly. This week I split I took a second teacher, so I'm kind of splitting it up. I feel like it's good, different accents, different people, so you can have different types of conversations, exposed to different types of vocabulary. So I think that'll be good as well to help my Italian continue expanding and being exposed to a bunch of things. Passive study this week, I did 6 out of 7 days. It was 6 episodes of the second season of that Guida Astrologica per Cuori Infranti. In English, it's like Astrological Guide for Broken Hearts or something like that. And so I finished the second season of that. It only has 2 seasons thus far. Don't know if there's going to be a third, so I need to find a new show. I found another one on Netflix. It's called like 56K, something like that. And so it looks good. I started the first episode. I haven't finished it though. And it seems good as well. So far, all the 2 shows that I've watched and now starting this third one, they all seem to be well done, good quality, though the subtitles on this new one don't seem as good as Guida and Odio il Natale. That had really, I think the subtitles were 100% what the audio was. So that was great. And, so here's picture for total hours on everything. So this week I did 24.6 hours, which is down from last week where I did 27.6 hours, but I'm still super happy with 24.6 because work is back in full swing now. So I'm really having to push and maximize. It reminds me a bit of my last semester in college where I had to be, last year in college where I was taking 6 and 7 classes, so I had to be super efficient with my time so I could still go to the gym and do, hang out with friends and do all the things I wanted. So I'm feeling a bit of that pressure again to be extremely efficient with my time, and it seems to be working well, really, aside from passive watching when I'm usually it's when I'm eating something, or really the only gaming I do now is if I'm playing with friends. So it's good. Then I did 3 hours of passive watching because the second season of Guida was 6 episodes of about half an hour long. So 2.9 hours of passive watching. And that wraps it up for this week. Thanks for following along, and I'll see you guys next week.